Hello everybody. Today's subject is an unusual subject. I will call it wasted time, wasted life. I will go through exploring a bit so you can be inspired to explore even further. At the beginning, let me just thank Jilly for this lovely, lovely scarf. Thank you, Jilly. And also thanking my subscribers, slowly growing. And I hope that this will also inspire you and you can explore for yourself this subject. As Rumi put it in one of his poems, I have a little drop of knowing, let it dissolve in your ocean. And I very much identify with this drop of knowing because this is how I feel, that my drop of knowing hopefully will dissolve in your ocean and will add to your grow and recovery. Let me just at the beginning, as I always do, quote a few people what they thought, as there are millions and millions and millions of people who thought about time and wasting and life and wasting time. So I will quote A.W. Tozer, who said, "A man by his sin may waste himself, which is to waste that which on earth is most like God. This is man's greatest tragedy and God's heaviest grief." Isn't that wonderful? And I always say to people I work with and myself, when I am wasting my time and my life, and my goodness, due to my traumas and personal tragedies and collapses and unconsciousness, I wasted quite a lot. But I always ask people I work with, that God possibly will ask us one only question, and that is, what have you done with life I gave you? So I'm asking myself this question, and hence my little attempt to communicate that with you through my video. I quote a few more people, and for that I need glasses. Charles Darwin: "A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life." 1 hour, imagine. And that is probably correct. And for that, not to waste time and life, we need consciousness. If we don't have it, if we don't have a relationship with ourselves, which traumatized people don't, they may usually escape, the waste would happen continuously. One of the ways we waste time is when we live in the past. Many people mentioned that. Jesus even said, "He who lived in the past and worries about tomorrow doesn't live in today." And that is correct. Therefore, what it means to seize the day, carpe diem, and what it means not to waste our life and our time. Victor Hugo: "Short as life is, we still make it shorter by the careless waste of time." So whether they are philosophers, whether they are writers, whether they are sages, whether they are poems, we all seem to read and listen about time waste. But in our case, in therapeutic terms, we see people endlessly wasteful. One of the things which makes us waste time is trauma, because with trauma we are not really very well connected to ourselves. If we're disassociated and if we worry, one of the things which we do is we have enormous amount of shame. And what shame does to us, it's a very subtle, sinister kind of situation. It makes us wanting to be perfect. The direct outcome of shame, perfection, would definitely kill us off. Because if we put all our energy to be perfect, how can we possibly put our energy to be ourselves? So being perfect, which very often is championed by all sorts of organizations and studies and people, it is a phenomenal time wasting. Because as Muhammad Ali once said it, if at the age of 50 you behave as if you were 20, you just wasted 30 years. Wonderful saying, and he was a tough guy. that 30 years might be unconsciously put into being perfect. It might be wasted on wrong people, on the wrong jobs, on the wrong situation. One of the English thinkers who lived in America and who did lecture extensively in this beautiful English accent, Alan Watts, once said, "Forget to do what other people want you to do, because it's a waste of time. Do what you have passion for." I remember I met an architect once who have not actually studied architecture, but this gentleman is quite well known in London. He loves old buildings, and he dedicated his passion, as it is important to have passion. When we traumatize, we don't recognize our passion, as we are not creative. This gentleman wants to preserve as many buildings in their original beauty as possible, because as he said it sitting next to me in some party, "You know, Maya, I am grieving by seeing what modern architects do to the magnificence of our building in London." So he clearly didn't waste his time. Unless you see time is wasted in the way of enjoying. If we, so to speak, waste our time enjoying ourselves, which is of immense importance to health, emotionally and spiritually, that time is not wasted. Because by having fun, which, for instance, shame-based people would not be able to have enough because they are busy being perfect or pleasing others, we come through to our creativity. And if you pay attention to successful people, they usually have enormous amount of fun and enormous amount of time for leisure, because that gives them, in a way, space to be in touch with themselves. Because if you're running away from yourself, if you're completely terrified that you are not enough, you're not actually being creative. You concentrate on what people think or talk about it, and sometimes you have to accept the truth that people are not really what they're supposed to do, and you may spend 10 years, I always talk to women about it, wasted on codependent relationship. You may go and live with a man who doesn't even have a grace to ask you to be his wife, doesn't give you honor and integrity, and it's not in his possession and dignity. And then next day, after 10 years or 12, will come and say, "You know, I just fell in love with a secretary. She's pregnant and I'm leaving you." And off he goes. Enormous amount of women and men, for that matter, nowadays, encouraged by all sorts of pressure, do that. It is self-harm at the best of time, and a waste of life and time at the worst. So we must look at that. Codependency is at the base of love addiction, and a love addiction is basically fantasy living. We create fantasy lovers, we create fantasy jobs, we create and project into future all sorts of things which may not necessarily be realistic. So we are wasting. We think we're very creative, but there is a tremendous difference between being creative and being in fantasy. As far as brain function is concerned, it's precisely the same part of brain who does that. However, it is not at all the same outcome. I remember, and I think I quote somewhere else in other videos, what Michaelangelo, who after all was a very creative chap, said about time wasting. There is no greater harm than that of time wasted. He, being so curious, perpetually was going for different things. One of the thing which is connected to wasting time is complacency. That is agreeing with everything. And that in itself, many people say it's even worse than not living your own truth. The time wasting is a malady which is common for traumatized people, even by using. There are so many people, so many wonderful 12 steps who share how much life they were wasted. When recovery started, I always say that it takes 7 to 10 years to catch up with your physical age and maturing process. And if you really truly take that into your heart, you may just speed it up and may be dedicated to healing and not wasting more than you already wasted. Because avoiding life, as Virginia Woolf said, you cannot find the peace by avoiding life. And we can avoid time and waste life and waste time and life by even going to sleep or going to daydreaming or fantasy, as I said. Daydreaming is a common time wasting. When we are in pain, when we are really lost, we like to believe that if we dream, we're creative. No, we're not. This is going through life by like sleeping. As one, I think Robin Sharma said, don't live the same year 75 times and call it life, because it's not life. I'd like to read something for you which is about fear of criticism, and that's an Arabic proverb. Stop wasting time getting upset at those who criticize your life. It is always someone who has no idea of price you paid to get to where you are today. So you see, if we are in good relationship with ourselves and dealing with shame, we may just make a catch with ourselves in recovery and may live our life on our terms. Also to stop looking for happiness in the useless way. One of the things which we as fantasists believe, that if we love somebody, that somebody may love us back. But that's another wasteful idea, because that's not always the case. We may spend times and times and years believing or grieving why this person have not loved us the way we did. Well, they didn't. As Benjamin Franklin put it, if time of all things is the most precious one, so wasting that must be the greatest mistake. If we are in fantasy, we don't ask people whether they can prove to us that they are right to be in our life. We will put up with people for years and years and years just to discover that actually they had no interest in us, but they had interest in what we represent to them. I always say in this time of my life that if you cannot be real with me, just leave me alone. Because reality principle definitely means not wasted a second, let alone an hour. And that reality principle and not wasting your time would give you idea that if anyone wants to be with you, they really have to make a lot of effort and prove to you that you actually would be okay to have them in reserving a space in your heart for this person. So I always say to people, think twice before you do that, because if the people don't make an effort to stay with you, don't bother. Time wasting and time life and being disassociated and being in shame and being in trauma means that we waste our talents, our gifts. We work in the wrong jobs. We forget about opportunities. Opportunities is something which we will be missing because we are in a not position to even pick them up. And that is unbelievably sad. So the time wasted is also through anger. Anger, like perfectionism, means that we very often are indecisive. We also very often underachieving. With anger, we often don't want to admit that we are wasteful because we cannot unblock ourselves. Anger means we procrastinate, and procrastination essentially is a wasting of time. Shame means we want to be perfect, another waste of time. Even gossiping is a waste of time. So at the end, I want to read you something which I often quote to myself. Hell begins at the day God grants us the clear vision of all that we might have achieved, of all gifts which we have wasted, and all that we might have done, which we did not do. So let's hope that we will think about this subject and attempt to be as creative and as much in reality and not wasteful as possible. Let's say serenity prayer. God grant us serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Bye for now.